Bonjour à toutes et bonjour à tous, très chères auditrices et très chers auditeurs. J'espère que vous allez bien. Aujourd'hui, c'est un épisode un peu spécial, encore une fois. C'est un test que je fais. On va dire que j'ai voulu créer, entre guillemets, une publicité pour mon livre, pour essayer de le mettre un peu en avant et de parler de mon livre le plus précisément possible pour donner envie aux potentiels lecteurs d'acheter mon livre. Alors, l'idée de cet épisode, c'est pas que vous achetiez mon livre juste après, ou même de vous pousser à l'acheter. C'est juste déjà me donner un petit avis en commentaire et de me dire ce que vous en pensez de l'interview que vous allez entendre. Donc, pour le moment, c'est une interview qui est faite en anglais. Mais bon, pour ceux qui connaissent bien l'anglais, il n'y aura pas de problème, c'est plutôt bien parlé et pas trop rapidement. Mais pour ceux qui ne parlent pas l'anglais, donc j'ai refait un peu tous les sous-titres. Donc il y a encore un peu de travail, je peux vous l'accorder, mais c'est quand même très facilement compréhensible. Et vous allez voir, c'est super intéressant. On écoute vraiment deux intervieweurs qui discutent ensemble et qui parlent de mon livre, vraiment du premier tome, pas dans l'intégralité du premier tome. Mais voilà, c'est quand même assez captivant, je trouve, c'est assez sympa. Je vous ai mis quelques photos pour vous illustrer un peu les propos des intervieweurs. Mais après, c'est un test, donc je referai effectivement une nouvelle vidéo vraiment bien plus poussée, bien plus avec une bien meilleure qualité. Voilà, vous avez les liens dans la description. Vous avez aussi le lien pour Le Voyage extraordinaire, donc c'est un livre pour les enfants, je vous le rappelle. Voilà, donc c'est ni plus ni moins, cet épisode n'est ni plus ni moins qu'une publicité pour mon livre. Donc après, je vous en remercie d'avance si vous regardez l'interview en entier. Ça me donnera de la visibilité et ça permettra que je puisse vendre un peu plus mon livre. Même si ça marche plutôt bien en ce moment. Voilà. En tout cas, j'espère que ça vous plaît. Et n'hésitez pas à commenter, à liker la vidéo. Et prenez soin de vous. Ciao, bisous.
All right, strap in, because today we're diving headfirst into Bracksville.
Bracksville.
It's a French sci-fi world that's got me hooked, honestly. We're going deep into the first book, folks.
Okay.
And let me tell you, this is not your typical space opera. Not even close.
It's really refreshing to see those classic sci-fi tropes, like the advanced tech and the looming invasion, but woven into this really complex story that grapples with some deeper questions about human resilience and...
Right. What's got me really, I don't know about you, but what's got me, really intrigued is how this world kind of reflects on things like loyalty and what it even means to be human.
Yeah.
When you're faced with this overwhelming power. Right. But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Right.
Let's start with the antagonist, Dogos. He's introduced on a planet called Xiron, which sounds like a whole other can of worms, honestly.
Xiron is fascinating. It's a study in contradictions, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
imagine a civilization that has starships and energy weapons,
Okay.
but their whole societal structure is built around these ancient warrior traditions.
Oh, jeez.
It's like they're living in the future, but with the values of a totally bygone era.
So they're out there with their, futuristic weaponry and stuff, but they still settle things based on lineage and honor and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of cool, actually. It's a wild mix. So what more can you tell me about these warrior traditions? What do they look like in this world?
Well, so the book mentions these powerful families called houses,
Okay.
and basically your lineage, it determines everything, right? Your social standing,
Yeah.
your
Yep.
even the advanced technology your family has developed over generations.
Wow.
So it's like instead of inheriting your parents' farm,
Right.
you're inheriting a starship factory or something.
Okay, so it's got that kind of Game of Thrones vibe.
Yeah, a little
But
bit.
instead of dragons, they're wielding laser cannons and, battling for control of galaxies instead of just, one little continent. I'm into it. Okay, so what kind of tech are we talking about specifically? Give me the details.
Right. So each house specializes in a different aspect of their technology.
Okay.
So some are masters of starship construction,
Okay.
designing vessels that can navigate the most treacherous corners of the universe, right?
Right.
Others excel in weapons manufacturing, creating energy swords that can cut through almost anything, or shields that can deflect, even the most powerful blasts.
Yeah.
So it's this specialization that actually creates this whole web of alliances and rivalries
Right.
that makes the whole power dynamic on Xiron so complex.
So it's this intricate dance of power, right?
Yes.
With each house trying to outmaneuver the others, but all while upholding these, like, ancient warrior codes.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Where does Dogos fit into this whole equation, then? Because he's a product of this world, but he also seems to be this force that's kind of poised to disrupt it, right?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, he's been raised with this belief that strength equals justice,
Okay.
that power is the ultimate measure of worth. But, the excerpts, they hint at something a little more complex, right? Like, there's a more complex philosophy there.
Okay.
Something that he learned from this mentor, Kalon.
A mentor. Okay, that always adds another layer. Who is this Kalon, and what kind of influence did he have on Dogos?
So Kalon is, he's shrouded in mystery,
Okay.
but the book does mention that he was a member of the Guardians of the Black Star.
Interesting.
And they seem to represent, like, a different kind of power, something more philosophical or even spiritual,
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder how their teachings, like, shaped Dogos, and if he ultimately rejected their wisdom in his pursuit of, galactic domination.
Right, so it's like he's got this internal struggle maybe
Yeah.
between the teachings of his mentor and then just like the brutal pragmatism of growing up on Xiron. Yeah. Which is a recipe for some serious internal conflict.
Absolutely.
So, with this belief system, Dogos sets his sights on Bracksville.
Right.
Tell me about Bracksville. What makes it so significant that it would actually, like, warrant his attention?
Well, I think it's important to note that Bracksville is more than just, like, a target for Dogos, right?
Yeah.
It represents everything that he seems to oppose.
Okay.
It's depicted as this beacon of human resilience
Okay.
and this testament to, like, progress and hope,
So it's a stark contrast, right?
Yeah.
You've got Xiron, this warrior planet that's clinging to these traditions.
Right.
And then you've got Bracksville over here, which is like a symbol of innovation and hope and all of that. It sounds like these two worlds are on a collision course with Dogo stuck in the middle.
Right. And that's really, like, the core of the conflict that we see unfolding in these early chapters.
Right. But how does a city become the embodiment of hope in this universe?
Yep.
Like, what makes Bracksville so special? It's like you've got these two opposing forces,
Yeah.
and they each represent like a different path for humanity, right?
Exactly.
But what I'm really curious about is how did this clash even come to be in the first place?
Right.
We know Dogos is on a warpath, essentially,
Yeah.
but what's the history here? Did something go down between Xiron and Bracksville that set this whole conflict in motion?
That's where the author's use of these time jumps gets really, really interesting.
Okay.
Because we get these glimpses of a massive conflict that happened, like, centuries before the main events of the book.
Okay.
This ancient war that, like, shaped human history. And it seems to, like, tie directly to the present conflict that we're seeing unfold.
So there's a lot of history that we're missing, like echoes of the past that are shaping the present, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you wonder if Dogos is really, like, forging a new path or if he's just playing out, like, this role that's been,
Right, written for him.
Yeah, written for him, exactly.
Interesting.
And within those glimpses of the past, we find these little clues about Project Z,
Okay.
which is this mysterious element that seems to be connected to both the ancient war and then also Dogos' own personal history.
Okay.
It's never fully explained, but it's clearly, like, a driving force behind his ambitions.
Project Z, okay. That sounds ominous. It sounds like it's loaded with secrets. I'm getting the sense that uncovering, like, what Project Z really is will be kind of key to understanding, like, the full scope of his plan.
Absolutely.
But for now, let's talk about his crew.
Okay.
Because it takes more than one man to wage a galactic war.
Yeah, it takes a village.
Even for someone as driven as Dogos.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, his inner circle. Who are these people?
So the book introduces us to Zara, known as the Fatal Sword,
Okay.
who is, like, Dogos' most trusted warrior.
Okay.
And she's, like, a master sword fighter.
Okay.
And then there's Cryon, the master strategist.
Okay.
He's, like, the brains behind Dogos' military campaigns, right?
Yep.
And then finally we have Vorax, called the Colossus,
Okay.
for his, like, immense size and strength.
They all sound formidable. They each sound like they're bringing, like, their own unique skills to the table.
Yeah, it's a real A-team.
Right, right. But you mentioned earlier that they also grapple with, like, their own internal struggles.
Right.
Which is always something that I think adds a lot of depth to a story.
Absolutely.
Because it makes the characters feel more real.
Right.
So let's start with Zara.
Okay.
What's her story? What's she dealing with?
So I find Zara really fascinating because she embodies this conflict between loyalty and like conscience.
Okay.
So she's like fiercely loyal to Dogos.
Yeah.
But as they draw closer to Bracksville, she starts to question like the true cost of his ambition.
Okay.
She sees the potential for like destruction, the innocent lives that will be lost, and it weighs heavily on her.
Yeah, it's like she's caught between this, like her duty to her leader, and then also her growing awareness of like the human cost of his ambition.
Right, exactly.
And that internal struggle, I think, is something that a lot of us can relate to.
Absolutely.
Even if the stakes aren't quite as high as like
Yeah.
galactic war.
Right.
So what about Cryon then? What's his internal conflict?
So Cryon, I think, represents the burden of knowledge, right?
Okay.
He's incredibly intelligent.
Okay.
He can see, like, the bigger picture.
Okay.
He can anticipate the consequences of Dogos' actions.
Right.
But that awareness becomes a double-edged sword because
Okay.
he understands the potential devastation that Dogos is about to unleash, but he also feels powerless to stop it.
So he's trapped by his own intelligence, in a way. Unable to turn away from the path that Dogos has chosen, even though he knows where it leads.
Yeah, and that's got to be a heavy burden to carry.
For sure. And what about Vorax, the Colossus? I mean, he sounds like the muscle of the operation, but I feel like there's got to be more to him than that.
Right. So Vorax is, he's a fascinating example of subverting expectations, right?
Okay.
You expect him to be this, like, brutal enforcer.
Right.
But underneath that imposing exterior, he yearns for something more, like a higher purpose.
Yeah.
He desires to protect, not destroy.
It's just,
There's this really powerful scene where he's like reflecting on the destruction he's caused.
Okay.
And you can just like sense his deep regret
okay.
and his longing for like redemption.
So it's that classic juxtaposition, like the gentle giant trope.
Right, exactly.
Taken to a whole other level, right?
Right.
Because he has the power to like level cities.
Right.
But what he really craves is this chance to use his strength for good.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if he'll find a way to break free from Dogos and like forge his own destiny.
Yeah, will he break free from the A-team and become like the solo act?
Right, exactly. So we've got these compelling characters. They're all kind of battling their own demons,
Yeah.
all while heading towards this inevitable confrontation.
Right.
So what can you tell us about Bracksville itself? Like, what is it that makes it such a tempting target for Dogos, but also such a beacon of hope for, for others?
Bracksville is described as like a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity,
Okay.
It's this city of like soaring architecture,
Okay.
advanced technology, a deep respect for knowledge.
Right.
It represents the potential of like what humanity can achieve even in the face of adversity.
I feel like Bracksville represents like the ideal future almost, while
Yeah.
Xiron is clinging to these like traditions of the past.
Right.
But I guess like in a way they both represent these different facets of what it means to be human.
Right.
Like the drive to progress versus the desire to preserve what we hold dear.
Exactly.
And now they're on this collision course
Right.
with Dogos stuck in the middle.
Right. And that collision is further complicated by this legend of the Savior,
Okay.
which is this prophecy that's like whispered amongst the people of Bracksville.
Okay.
And it speaks of this figure who is destined to rise up and challenge Dogos, to like tip the scales back towards hope.
A prophecy. Okay, so now we're getting into some serious like hero's journey territory here.
Right. Exactly.
But the question is, who is this savior?
Mm.
Is it one specific person, or is it more like a symbol of resistance, or...
That's the million credit question, isn't it?
Right.
And, the author deliberately leaves it open to interpretation.
Okay.
So is it William Swan, the leader that we meet in the future, who like guides humanity through the aftermath of Dogos' arrival?
Okay.
Or could it be like his son, Dran, who's this brilliant scientist, but he's really grappling with the ramifications of like this advanced technology?
So both compelling possibilities, each kind of representing a different aspect of like leadership in the face of these just like unimaginable challenges.
Exactly.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about those glimpses of the future that you mentioned. What happens after Dogos arrives on Earth? Like, what does this new world look like? Paint me a picture.
So the glimpses that we get are fragmented,
Okay.
but they paint this picture of a world that is forever changed.
Okay.
So imagine like cities that have been reshaped by Xiron technology, these towering structures that like dwarf anything humanity has ever built.
Okay.
But there's also this like sense of unease,
Oh, yeah.
this like lingering fear that the piece could crumble at any moment.
So it's a world grappling with the consequences of progress,
Yes.
trying to find that balance between the wonders of this advanced technology, but also like the enduring values that make us human.
Exactly.
Are there any clues about the fate of Bracksville itself in these future glimpses?
So we know that Bracksville becomes like this symbol of resistance. It's like a rallying point for those who oppose Dogos' rule.
Okay.
But the specifics remain, like, shrouded in mystery, almost as if the author's inviting us to imagine, like, what a fight for freedom might look like in this, like, transformed world.
So it's like that sense of hope, right, that Bracksville embodies. It never really dies out.
Right.
It's forced underground, maybe,
Right.
but it's still there.
Right.
It continues to flicker in the hearts of those who refuse to give in to despair.
Exactly. And it's within those pockets of resistance that we encounter the homogenes.
Okay.
These genetically enhanced humans who, like, blur the line between biology and machine.
Genetically enhanced humans. Okay. Now we're talking about a whole new level of complexity here because you got this really fascinating ethical dilemma,
Right.
The potential benefits of like genetic engineering
Mhm.
versus the potential dangers of like messing with the very essence of what it means to be human.
Exactly. Are we playing God? It's that age-old question.
Right. But it's amplified to a whole other level now.
Right.
So tell me more about the homogenes.
Okay.
What role do they play in this future?
So they represent both a solution and then also a whole new set of challenges, right? So on one hand, they have these incredible abilities, strength, intelligence, resilience,
Right.
that could help to, like, rebuild what was lost, you know?
Right.
But on the other hand, their very existence raises these really profound questions about what it means to be human.
It's like, are they tools to be used or are they something more?
Exactly.
It's a really interesting question.
It's a question that resonates, like, throughout all the excerpts. And it adds another layer of moral ambiguity to this already intricate, like, narrative.
Yeah, it's like every layer we peel back just reveals another layer of complexity,
Exactly.
Warrior planets, ancient prophecies, genetically enhanced humans, and it's all this like battle for the soul of humanity.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It really is. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, exactly. And we haven't even gotten to the bottom of it yet. You know what I mean?
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right, exactly.
The author has created this world that just begs to be explored, you know? It's
Yeah.
full of these compelling characters and these thought-provoking themes, and there are enough twists and turns to keep you guessing until the very last page.
It's definitely a world that I'm like eager to like delve deeper into.
Yeah.
But for now, I think we need a minute to process all this, honestly,
Right.
because we've covered a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just there's a lot to unpack here
Absolutely.
in terms of the themes, the ideas that the story presents. So it really make you think,
Absolutely.
And it's clear that the author has created this world with so much detail. It's like
Yeah.
every piece like fits together in this really intricate way. And it all kind of echoes back to these big questions about like what it means to be human in this like age of advanced technology and stuff.
Exactly. And what makes Bracksville so compelling, I think, is that it doesn't give you those, like, easy answers.
Right.
It throws you right into the action.
Yeah.
It's this whirlwind of conflicting ideologies and technological marvels and characters that are grappling with these, like, impossible choices.
Right.
And it makes you wrestle with those same questions right alongside them.
Yeah. It's that immersive kind of storytelling
Yeah.
that stays with you,
Absolutely.
Like you finish reading it and you're still thinking about it.
Yeah.
It sparks all these new thoughts and interpretations and stuff.
For sure. For sure.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
We've talked about warrior traditions, prophecies. We even talked about like genetically modified humans. But there's one thing we haven't really touched on yet,
Okay.
and that's magic.
Ah. Interesting.
Are there like any hints of like supernatural elements in this universe?
Okay.
Or is it strictly hard sci-fi?
That's a really clever observation, actually, and it speaks to the way that the author, like, really masterfully blends genres.
Okay.
So while the excerpts, they primarily focus on, like, technology and scientific advancements,
Right.
there are these, like, subtle hints of something a little more mystical at play.
Interesting.
Right. Remember the Guardians of the Black Star?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Kalon's group, shrouded in mystery?
Right.
Their power seems to be rooted in something, like, ancient.
Right.
Something that even Dogos, with all of his advanced weaponry, even he seems kind of wary of.
That's right. They were so mysterious. Like,
Right.
we never really learned a lot about their motives or their methods.
Yeah, what are they really up to?
Exactly. It's like they represent a completely different kind of power altogether, you know?
Right.
One that exists outside the realm of just like technology and what we understand about science. So
Right, it makes you think, like, is there more to this universe than we're seeing on the surface?
exactly.
Right, like, could there be, like, a hidden layer of, like, magic or some kind of ancient force
Right.
that could, like, completely change the balance of power in ways that we can't even
Yeah,
imagine?
we wouldn't even see it coming.
Exactly, and that's an element that I'm sure a lot of readers, like, are gonna be thinking about
Oh, yeah.
as they, like, make their way through this world and, like, explore this universe further.
For sure.
And it speaks to, like, just how rich and, like, how deep the world building is.
Right, because it's not just a simple, like, good versus evil, like
This
science
makes
versus
it
whatever.
more nuanced than that.
Right, exactly. There are all these layers
Layers upon layers.
to uncover. It's really well done.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome.
It's been a lot of fun.
I mean, this deep dive has been a wild ride, I'll be honest.
It has been.
Like, we went from, the warrior culture of Xiron to, like, the resilient spirit of Bracksville and, like, all the moral dilemmas in between. So
all the twists and turns.
a lot.
And for those listening at home, as you continue your own exploration of Bracksville, remember to pay attention because the details matter.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do.
Every character, every time jump, every piece of technology, it's all there for a reason.
Right, right.
The author was very, very deliberate.
It's the kind of story that will challenge how you think about things,
Absolutely.
make you face some, like, maybe uncomfortable truths, and just leave you with this, like, lingering sense of wonder.
Yeah, it stays with you.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to figure it all out, right?
Right, B.
Unravel the mysteries surrounding Project Z, or the true nature of, like, who this savior is and how it all, like, plays out. So
The real journey is the one that, like, we take within ourselves as we, like, really grapple with these big questions.
ooh, that's deep. I like that.
The author's making us work for it.
Right, exactly. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into Bracksville.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I am definitely going back into those excerpts, like, as soon as we're done here, to see what other secrets I can uncover.
There's always something more to discover.
Right, exactly. Until next time, folks, keep exploring.